Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to this tutorial. I know a lot of us are anticipating already for this tutorial when I mentioned it in the forum that I'll be creating a tutorial on how to send data from Raspberry Pi to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. It was a challenge for me actually. I add up to 400 lines of code to reduce to 100 lines to make it easier for people to send data from Raspberry Pi to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through the solution on how to send data from Raspberry Pi to Microsoft Azure IoT Central in just 166 lines of. For those that are not new to this channel, you already know how it works. I do create tutorials on how to send data from different IoT boards to different cloud platforms. And today, as I mentioned, I'm focusing on Raspberry Pi and Azure IoT Central. I already created a tutorial on how to send data from Node MCU, which is ESP8266, to Microsoft Azure IoT Central to other IoT platforms too. So I've just encouraged you, if you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscription button and also the notification bar. So whenever I release another tutorial, you'll be the first to be informed. And if you find it informative, don't forget to share, like, and also, again, share it with your friends. So let's get started with the hardware connection as we used to do, followed by the software connection. So now let me walk you through the hardware connection. Here I have my DHT and I have my resistor. It's a 10K resistor. I have my breadboard and I have my Raspberry Pi. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm using a Raspberry Pi 4 for this tutorial. I just got this newly. So I've already set up my connections. I've connected the jumper wires to the Raspberry Pi. This is the first one. This is connected to pin 1 of the Raspberry Pi. And this is going to be the data pin. It's connected to pin 4 on the Raspberry Pi, that is GPIO4. Not actually pin 4, but GPIO4. And this is connected to pin number 39, which is a ground pin. So don't forget, this is pin 1. This is GPIO4. If you have to count, GPIO4 falls to pin number 7. So this is pin number 7, which is GPIO4, and this is pin number 39, which is a ground pin. I'm going to plug in my DHC sensor A, and in this sensor, this is pin 1, pin 2, 3, and 4. So my DHC sensor will come here, and I have my 10K resistor in between pin 1 and pin 2. So I just go back and plug this in. So I have my 10K resistor in between pin 1 and pin 2. So as I have here, this is VCC pin, which is pin 1, 3 volts on the Raspberry Pi. It comes to pin 1. And this is the data pin, which is GPL4, pin number 7 on the Raspberry Pi. It comes to pin 2. So pin 3 will be left unconnected, while the ground pin will go to the last pin, which is pin 4. So this is the old setup. So I'm going to connect this to my computer now and do all necessary setup. So I'll be connecting my Raspberry Pi to my computer via headless, so that a lot of things will be easy for me to do. I just slot this in and connect this to my computer. Then I power on the Raspberry Pi. So the first thing we have to do is to come to our web browser. For this tutorial, I'm using Microsoft Edge. I created a free tutorial a while ago on how to send data from ESP8266 to Microsoft Azure. I recommended that it's quite better to use Microsoft Edge when dealing with Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So come to your web browser and go to portal.azure.com. And after signing up, if you are new to Azure, you can just sign up. And if you already have an account, simply sign in to your account. So here I am in my home page. So this is Microsoft Azure. And from here, I'm going to create a resources, which is a Microsoft Azure IoT Central application. So instead of going through the normal process, you can just come to search and search for IoT Central. Okay, and here I have it IoT Central application. Click on IoT Central application. Excuse me. And you want to create a new application. If you don't have an application created already, will not be there. I already have one created. So to create a new one, just simply click on create. And here we have to fill in our details. Then the first thing you have to fill is the resource name. I'm going to call this RPi to Azure. Okay, Raspberry Pi to Azure, that's the name I'm going to call it. So you have to input your subscription type. Here I'm using Azure for Students, and also a resource group. So what you can do is to click on MSSA. In my own case now, if you don't have a resource group created, just click on create new. But if you have one created already, just click on the resource group that you want your application to be in. So under template, select a custom template, custom application, and location, choose the closest region to you. Here I'm going to select East US. So now click on create. Okay, now we have submitting deployment. Deployment is in progress. You'll not be able to access your deployment until it's done. So for now, the deployment is in progress. Okay, as I'm continuing, don't forget, if you are liking the video, click on the subscribe button, and also feel free to share the video if you find it resourceful. So now that I'm done with deployment, I'm going to click on go to resource. So this is going to link me to my Microsoft Azure IoT Central application. So as you can see, the title here is sorry, RPi to Azure. This is my application. This is Microsoft Azure IoT Central application. We have my resource group. Some essential details about your application have been shown here. This is the subscription ID, the tags, the resource group, which is MSSA in my own case. So to go to Microsoft Azure IoT Central, where you can set all your devices and configure all the dashboard, we are going to click on a customized URL for our application, which is this. So click on this and a new tab will be open where you'll be led to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. And I also like to point out that it's possible for you to skip the whole process and just go to azuriotcentral.com directly from your web browser and you're able to create the same thing. But I like doing it like this. It's more official to go through all this process to create a Microsoft Azure IoT Central application. So and here I am in Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So I have my project which is titled RPi to Azure. If you check the sidebar, you have devices, you have device groups, you have device templates, you have data analyzer, and so on. So let me just walk through what we are going to be doing in this tutorial. We're going to be creating first a device template. Our device is going to be based on this template. However, we configure the template, that's what our device is going to emulate. Then we are going to be creating a device. So what the capacity that this gives you is that you can have a single template and create as many devices as you like that will be using the same template. So the first thing is to create a device template. So your device is going to be based on this template. Now, I want to point out that your template depends on the type of data you are expecting from your device. So for now, we are going to be sending data from a DHT and we are expecting temperature data and also humidity data. So our template to be based on this. Our graph to be structured based on this. Don't forget you are doing all this in device template. You can also use some predefined templates. We are going to be seeing them later. But for now, I'm going to be creating my own template, which is going to be reading my humidity and also my temperature and be plotting them in a graph. To create the device template, is that you click on new or you click on create a device template. Either of the two is going to do exactly the same thing. So here I'm going to click on create a device template. Now, if you scroll down this page, you're going to be seeing a lot of predefined templates from Microsoft that you can use. I'm not going to be using any of them. If your board is the same, maybe you are working on another project and you have a board that has already been configured, you can simply choose any of these projects. I'm telling you, they work perfectly. I've used one of them a while ago, but since I've not seen anyone that suits DHT sensor data, I'm just going to be creating my own. So I click on IoT device, then click on next. to customize. So it's asking us to give our device template a name. Here I'm going to give it RPI. So this is RPI data DHT. So I'm naming my device template RPI DHT now. So I'll click on next. So these are just my review, and I'll click on create. So I have RPI DHT as my device template. So to configure my template, I'm going to be creating a custom model. So from here, I'm going to be configuring my template. So the first thing I want to do is, now let me explain this. These are device templates, and we are going to be adding a component to it. The component will be like the device we want to be sending from. So we are not actually creating a device, we are just creating a template for one of our components. So it's going to be we are creating a component for our device. So to create a component, click on these three dots and click on add component. So at the same time, I'm going to be creating custom model. And then we can now configure our component. So take note very well, our device template is called RPI-DHT. So we are going to be creating a component inside device template that our device is going to be based on. So here I'm going to be clicking on add capability. So capabilities are what what you are expecting from your actual device. And here I'm expecting temperature. So the capacity type is telemetry, and the semantic type, I'm going to put temperature again since I'm expecting temperature data. So another thing I'm going to be adding humidity. The same thing, it's also a telemetry message, and yeah, I'll be putting humidity. So I'm going to leave it with humidity. Now click on save. So another thing I would like to do, if you check here, it's our component is still being named component. We can choose to change the name. Just come here and click on edit identity, and then I'm going to change the name to DHT sensor. I like to put it as DHT sensor, and also I also call this the same thing, DHT sensor. I think I have it typed before. Okay, yes, DHT sensor. So the component, the display name too, you can. I'm just put DHT. All these things they don't actually count. Okay, so just take note. We are going to be coming back to this, but this interface ID, you are going to be copying it. So take note of it. You might just leave it for now. When it's time to copy it, I'll come back to copy it. So after that, click on save. You can see that our component has been changed to DHT sensor, and from here we can see that it's a component. Our capabilities are temperature and humidity. So we can come to view. So this is how we want our dashboard to be displayed, how we want our data to be displayed. So I'm going to click on generate default views. Okay. So if I come back to overview again, so that's already generated this view for me. I have the graph of temperature and humidity, and I have this for temperature and humidity. So what I would like to do is that in configuring this chart, I want it to give me the last known value. So I'm going to click on last known value here. The same time I'm going to click on last known value. So that's the two things I used to do while setting up my dashboard. After that, I'll click on save. So we can go back now. So our view has been configured. Our component has been configured. Notice that there are quite a lot of things you can do with device templates. You can put customize. You can configure how your raw data will be displayed. You can set some cloud properties, and you can also set some property messages. So after creating a device template, so we have to publish it before our device can access it. So I'm going to click on publish and publish. So you can see this is grayed out, meaning that our device template has been published. So to create a device now, come to devices, and I'm going to click on new to add a new device. So here we can give your device a name. So you can give it any name you feel like giving it. Here I'm going to give it, I call it DHT monitor. That's not a suitable name. I'll just call it DHT monitor. So device ID, I'll call it the same thing, but I'll just add one. So in case I have more than one. So it's asking for a template now. So this is the template will be created. I'll click on this and click on create. So with this, we can see that our device has been successfully created. Click on DHT monitor. So for now, we don't have anything coming. This is the graph. No data has been sent. If you check the raw data, no data has been sent also. And if you want to view our connection information, if you click on this connect, you're going to be seeing all the information you need to connect to this device. So we have our ID scope, device ID, and we have the SAS, which is the shared access signature primary key. So we are going to be copying all this, but for now, I'm going to hold on Azure IoT Central, and I will go to my Raspberry Pi to do all necessary setups too. Okay, for this tutorial, my Raspberry Pi is set up as headless. So I've already set up all necessary communication between my Raspberry Pi and my computer, and I'm using VNC to access my Raspberry Pi. So if I open my VNC viewer, and here, excuse me, I've been doing this all day. Okay, here I have my Raspberry Pi window. As you can see, I have my desktop running underneath, and I have VNC viewer opened here. So this is my Raspberry Pi. I'll be doing the connection, so I can be working on my Raspberry Pi and also on my computer simultaneously. So now I'll just walk us through what we're going to be doing in the part of Raspberry Pi. At the beginning of the tutorial, we have seen how we set up the hardware connection between the DHT and the Raspberry Pi. So here we are going to be doing two things majorly: setting up our DHT on Raspberry Pi, that is making our Raspberry Pi to be able to read DHT values, and also installing all necessary dependencies and modules to make our Raspberry Pi send DHT data to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So the first thing, that's the important thing that we need to do first, is to make sure our Raspberry Pi is able to read our DHT sensor. If you have been working with DHT before on your Raspberry Pi, probably you might have set this up, but I've just explained briefly. Actually, I've already set it up on my own computer too. I've not been doing it again, but I'll lead you to the resources that you can use to set up your Raspberry Pi for DHT. So what I'm using is this particular file. The link is in the description below. It's a documentation written by Adafruit on how to configure Raspberry Pi and DHT 11 or 22. So if you check the tutorial, the write-up, the documentation is quite easy to follow. So the first thing you have to do is to click on this, set up your Linux board for using Circuit Python libraries. If you click here, so you'll be linked to another page. So just install all this. Sudo apt-get update, sudo apt-get upgrade, sudo apt-get install Python 3 pip, sudo apt-get install upgrade setup tools. So after that, copy this text and run it on your terminal. That's your bash shell. So after that, you can go back to the original page and download this Circuit Python DHC module. So after that, download libgpiod2. So by that, after doing that, you are done setting up your Raspberry Pi to read DHT sensor value. So a simple example that you can use to test is this code. Once you copy the code, you can paste it to Tony or any other ID that you are using to run Python on your Raspberry Pi. So here I'm using Tony. I've already copied it. I've already set up everything as I mentioned initially. So I've just run this code to see that my Raspberry Pi is able to read my DHT sensor. Oh, what am I? I've been having this problem. I don't know what's causing it, but I was able to read it naturally. Now it's unable. Okay. As you can see, my Raspberry Pi was able to read my temperature and also my humidity that you can see 95.0 Fahrenheit / 35 degrees Celsius, and also my humidity is 26%. So that's the first thing. Once you are able to read your DHT sensor from your Raspberry Pi, you are done with the first step. Now the second step is how to set up our Raspberry Pi to send this DHT data to Azure IoT Central. So next thing we are going to do now is to set up our Raspberry Pi so that it can send data from DHT to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So I had to pause the tutorial and I was able to solve the problem I was having at that time, saying unable to set line 4 to input. So what I did was that I uncomment out this particular line in my DHT library. I changed this one to DHT 11 and also this to D4. So with this, my DHT code is running fine. So you can see we have temperature coming and also humidity coming. So if you're having this similar problem, you can just uncomment out this line and change all boards to your board type and also the pin to the pin you are using. So I'll go straight to setting up Raspberry Pi to send data to IoT Central. So let me stop this. So what you want to do is to come to your browser. Don't forget, I have two windows open now. This is my normal window, and I have my, let me minimize this, and I have my Raspberry Pi window using VNZ viewer. So go to GitHub. I'm going to go into my repository now, slash so here I'm in my repository. I'm going to drop the link in the description section below. And now see this particular repository, Raspberry Pi to Azure IoT Central. I'm going to click here and there's a zip file here that contains all the code and all the libraries that we need. So you just come here and download this. So after downloading, we're going to open this particular folder and unzip it. So I'm going to extract this to my desktop. So open. So if I go to my desktop now, I have this. So Azure IoT Central Raspberry Pi. So clicking on it, we have all these files available for us. So where you want to go is to go into Azure IoT devices and samples PNP. So this is the directory that we are going to be working in majorly. So we have two files here. Actually, we have three we are going to be considering. We have Azure DHT.py. This is the code we are going to be editing to send data from our Raspberry Pi to Azure IoT Central. So we have PNP helper. This is going to be helping our data to be converted into the right telemetry. And we have random IoT Central. So here I'm just sending random data to Azure IoT Central. So what I want to open is Azure DHT.py. And also I'm going to open the other one, which is random IoT Central. So if you check this particular code, which is random IoT Central, I'm just sending random value. You can see here we have temperature message equal to temperature random 10. So I'm not going to be dealing with this majorly. I'll just go straight to sending data from our DHT, and I'm working directly with this particular file. So now let me walk you through how we are going to be setting up this particular file. So we are not done with setting our Raspberry Pi up to send data to Azure IoT Central. We need one more module to install, and open your bash shell and type pip install Azure IoT device. So I already have it installed before, but I'm going to run it again. So you can see requirements already satisfied. So I already have the module installed on my computer. So if you have not already have the module installed, it's going to install the module on your computer. And with this, our Raspberry Pi is ready to send data to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So I'm going to close this. And let's go back to our IDE. So I'll just be walking you through the whole setup for this particular IoT Azure DHT.py. So this is the code we are going to be working with to send data from DHT sensor to Azure IoT Central. So I have all the necessary modules installed from the first line to the 12th line. So this 12th line is where I'm importing my Adafruit DHT. So I have this configured. So I'm using DHT 11. If you're using DHT 22, change this to 22. And I'm using pin 4. So you can change the pin to anyone you are using. So we have actually 5 things to set up: device ID scope, device key, model ID, and also sensor name. So I'm going. So this is my device. I'm back in my Azure IoT Central now. So I'm going to be showing you a technique. What I do use when I want to send file from my normal Windows to my Raspberry Pi window using the VNC viewer. So let me click on connect. We have seen this before. If you want to check all our connectivity details, so I'm going to copy the ID scope and paste it right. So I've just typed ID scope here and paste it right into my file. I'll also grab my device ID, and paste it here. Also, the last I'm going to be, okay, not the last actually. So I'm going to be grabbing this primary key, copy and paste it. Don't forget, I'm doing this because I can't directly copy from my Windows to my VNC window because they are actually two computers. So this is my key. So you can't directly copy from Microsoft Edge, my browser, to the code I'm running on VNC, which is the Raspberry Pi window. So I will first copy everything into a text file, then I will send it to Raspberry Pi using the file transfer. So I've copied this. So I still have some things left to copy. So come to device template, click on the template we are using, the one we created the other time, and come to your component, which is DHT sensor. So click on this edit identity and scroll down and copy interface ID. So you're going to be copying this interface ID, and also we are going to take note of our component name, which is DHT sensor. So this is the last I'm going to be copying, and this is our model ID, or you can call it interface ID. So I'm going to go right on and save this. So I'll just save its details. So after saving this, we can come back to our Raspberry Pi window and click on this VNC server. Click on this and click on file transfer. Or we don't need to do that. This one I want to send from Raspberry Pi to my computer. So just scroll down here on this drop down, file transfer, to send files. I come to desktop. And I'm going to grab the text file from here. So this is, I saved as details. So with this, I've successfully transferred the file from Windows to Raspberry Pi window. So I can close this and it's automatically saved on the desktop. So here I have details. So it's DHT. So I have my ID scope, my device ID, key, and also model ID. So I'm going to copy my ID scope and paste it right in. So this ID scope. So I'll be grabbing the device ID, which is DHT monitor, and paste it right in. So I'll be grabbing also the device key and paste it here. Also, lastly, which is So I'm going to be pasting this here also. So I have this, and if you recall, our sensor name is, which is our component name is DHT sensor. So with this, I have everything I need to fill in. Everything has been properly filled in. And from where we can send data. If you run this code, we are going to be sending data to Azure IoT Central. So I'll just go on and save this. And after inputting all the necessary details, we save the code and we hit the run button. Let's wait for this. Okay, as you can see, our device was assigned. See, device was assigned. Press Q to quit. So, and my Raspberry Pi is now sending the temperature and also the humidity data to Azure IoT Central. So, I would like to point out that even if you are saying unable to set line 4 to input here, just hold on a little bit, it's going to work. I've already optimized the code so that even if you are saying unable to set line 4 to input, just hold on a little bit, it's going to work. So let me go to my Azure IoT Central now to check this. So you can see the data is already coming to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. I have my temperature displayed here, my humidity displayed, and also the graph of temperature and the humidity. If you come to raw data, you're going to be seeing the JSON format of data being sent to Microsoft Azure IoT Central. So my data is still being sent. Let me scroll this up. So we can see whenever a message is being sent, you see the messages saying sent message. So to check the message again, you go to my Windows, Microsoft Azure IoT Central, and we can see data being pumped to the cloud provider, which is Microsoft Azure IoT Central in this case. So that's simply it, how to send data from Raspberry Pi to Microsoft Azure IoT Central using the HT11 module. I'm going to mention this again. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, kindly do so now if you like it and it's informative. Don't forget to share, like, and also subscribe to the channel. So see you in the next series.